Have you ever wondered why you seem to carry a burden no one else can see? Why even when surrounded by people, there's a silence inside you that screams? Why you keep repeating the same cycles, the same pain, the same fears, as if you're trapped in a movie you didn't choose, yet are the main character of? Maybe you're not just broken, maybe you're one of the chosen. More than 60% of people who experience deep family trauma also go on a lifelong spiritual quest. That's no coincidence. It's a calling. In this video, we'll explore how family trauma isn't a curse. It's a sacred portal to spiritual awakening and self-realization. You'll understand why you've always felt like you don't belong, why you keep reliving patterns you swore you'd break, and most importantly, how to turn that pain into light, that wound into purpose. If you've ever felt your life had a deeper meaning, that something inside you is waiting to be born, this video was made for you. Like, comment, "I feel this" if this intro touched your heart, and subscribe to keep walking this journey with us. Let's go together to the depths of the soul and back. Have you always felt different? The calling of the chosen ones. There's a kind of silence that screams, a kind of presence that feels invisible, and a loneliness that's not about lacking people, but lacking connection with your own soul. If you've made it here, maybe you've already felt that emptiness. Maybe, even as a child, you wondered why you seemed to see the world through different eyes, why you sensed pain in words left unspoken, why, even surrounded by affection, there seemed to be an invisible wall between you and everyone else. Don't worry, this doesn't mean there's something wrong with you. On the contrary, it may be the clearest sign that something is deeply right with you. You're one of the ones who came to see what's hidden, to hear what's been silenced for generations, to feel what no one else dared to. That's how the spiritual journey of the chosen ones begins, not with lights, not with blessings, but with the weight of carrying a soul that can no longer live asleep. Carl Jung once wrote, "The meeting with oneself is often the meeting with what we fear most in ourselves." And for the chosen ones, that meeting starts early. Maybe you remember moments when you were among friends, but felt like you were speaking another language. Maybe you were the child who asked questions that were too deep, or the teen who preferred silence over parties, introspection over noise. Maybe you were the one who felt others' pain as if it were your own, or who had dreams that felt more real than waking life. These aren't flaws, they're echoes of the soul trying to remind you who you are. But we live in a society afraid of depth, afraid of anything that doesn't fit into statistics or social scripts. So that sensitivity, which is actually a gift, is often treated like a problem. You were called too sensitive, too dramatic, too complicated, and over time, you started to believe it. You learned to stay quiet, to adapt, to wear masks so you could survive in a world that rewards superficiality and punishes inner truth. If you feel like your soul is old, maybe it's because it has walked many lifetimes. That feeling of not belonging, of being born in the wrong time, is common among those called to awaken. And this isn't cheap mysticism. From a psychological standpoint, Jung called it the individuation complex. The psyche's drive to become its true self, even if it goes against everything society expects. But what happens when you try to go with the flow, but your soul swims against it? You get sick, not necessarily with fevers or visible wounds, but with anxiety attacks, sleepless nights, depression without cause, and a deep existential sadness no medication can cure. That sadness has a name. It's the longing for yourself. It's your soul's lament for being abandoned in the name of survival. In myths, the hero always begins their journey far from home, not just physically, but emotionally. Buddha leaves the palace. Moses is cast into the river. Jesus grows up far from power. They're different, misfits, misunderstood. And what are the myths trying to tell us? that the chosen one never starts the journey in peace. It begins in rupture, in trauma, in the aching sense of not belonging, because only those who know pain deeply can hold true compassion. Real wisdom doesn't come from comfort. It's born of chaos. You were called too, not with a trumpet, but with silences, not with miracles, but with losses, not with answers, but with questions that never let you sleep in peace. Maybe you tried to be like everyone else, the perfect child, the successful professional, the ideal partner. But deep down, something always hurt, as if your soul whispered, "This isn't you. This is who you were taught to be in order to survive." And here's the raw truth. Many of the chosen ones are actually the healers of their family line. They're born with the strength to break patterns, heal ancestral wounds, and guide others back to the center of themselves. But before healing, you must remember that the feeling of not belonging is what connects you to the whole. Remember that discomfort is the beginning of transformation. Remember that your suffering is not punishment. It's a calling. You're not here by accident. If you feel different, it's because your mission is different. And that mission begins when we stop running from pain and start listening to it. Maybe as you watch this, you're remembering all the times you tried to fit in and couldn't, or the times you pretended to be someone else just to please, or even the moments when, without knowing why, you felt something greater calling you. If that's you, take a deep breath. You're among your people now. Comment below, "I am one of the chosen." Let's create a circle of recognition so all those carrying awakened souls know they're not alone. The beginning of pain. When family becomes a battlefield, every awakening story starts with a wound, and more often than not, that wound has an address: the family. The home, which should be a nest, is often a maze. The mother, who should be a safe harbor, becomes a source of demands, judgment, or emotional absence. The father, who should be a guide, turns into a shadow, a silence, or aggression. And the child, so small and sacred, learns that in order to survive, they must abandon themselves. This is the subtle battlefield that many chosen ones face in early childhood, the moment when the soul begins to crack and the ego rises as an improvised shield. From that point on, the spiritual journey is no longer optional. It becomes necessary. Think back to when you were a child. You didn't ask for much. You just wanted to be seen, heard, accepted. But maybe in trying to be yourself, you found rejection. Or worse, you were met with silence. The pain of not being seen by those who were supposed to love us is one of the most traumatic experiences a soul can carry. And the worst part is that we rarely recognize it as trauma. In Jungian psychology, this type of pain manifests as the wound of archetypal abandonment, a rupture in the connection between the ego and the self, the deepest essence of being. The problem is that, in order to keep belonging to the family group, the child adapts. They repress their emotions, put on the mask their parents approve of, and little by little, they forget who they are. That's the first act of self-betrayal. It's silent, but profound. Have you ever wondered why you keep repeating certain emotional patterns? Why you attract people who hurt you in similar ways? Or why you feel guilty saying no, even when you know you're abandoning yourself? Much of this didn't start with you. These are emotional inheritances passed down through generations. Unconscious programming passed from parent to child like secret codes, shaping who you believe you must be. Carl Jung called this family complexes, emotional nuclei formed from unresolved trauma. It's as if you inherited not just your mother's eyes or your father's temper, but also their pain, their fears, their shame. And here's the most impactful truth. What isn't healed in one generation is passed down to the next as destiny. You might be living a story that isn't yours, carrying a guilt that was never born in you, trying to save your parents, consciously or not, while forgetting yourself. It's hard to admit, But many chosen ones were wounded by the people they loved most. And before judging those parents or siblings, it's important to see that they were wounded too. They unconsciously repeated what they learned, and you were born different. You were born with a soul that refuses to stay numb, with a heart that won't sign silence pacts, with a spirit that came to heal, not just itself, but the entire family tree. That's why maybe you were the rebel, the difficult one, the one who didn't follow the rules, or the one who isolated themselves because they felt too much. But instead of guilt, know this: that was your real self trying to survive. Maybe you grew up with food on the table, good clothes, everything you needed. But something was missing. A look that embraced you. An ear that truly listened. A hug that said, "You're allowed to be who you are." And when that doesn't happen, the child starts blaming themselves. They think, "I must be the problem." And that's when the false identity is born, shaped to please. Jung said trauma forces us to create social personas, masks that protect us from pain. But over time, those masks begin to suffocate the soul. How many adults today live as characters they no longer even recognize? How many still live trying to please their parents, even after they've passed away? But here's the turning point. Trauma, when faced with awareness, becomes a portal to rebirth. You can only access the self, your truest self, when you dive into the pain the ego tries to avoid. This is the spiritual paradox. The wound that breaks us is the same one that opens us. Just as clay needs a crack for light to enter, the soul needs collapse to remember who it is. Jung called this the individuation process, a return to the true center of being after traversing internal chaos. And that process almost always begins with the family. The chosen ones are, more often than not, the healers of the lineage. They're the ones who don't fit in, who challenge the rules, who break the silence. But that mission isn't without cost. It demands that you see your parents not as gods, but as wounded human beings. It asks that you forgive without forgetting, and that you set yourself free without needing to blame. The true healer of the lineage must heal themselves first. Maybe right now you're remembering tense conversations, painful silences, wounds opened by poorly chosen words. Maybe you're crying, realizing you still carry the fear of disappointing your parents, or the ache of having been invisible your whole childhood. All of this is sacred. These emotions aren't weakness. They're your soul's invitation to come home, to yourself. Comment below, "I'm healing my lineage." Let's show the algorithm and the universe that there are people doing the hard work of inner healing. Family is our first mirror. And when that mirror reflects distortion, the soul learns to see itself with shame. But now you have the chance to see yourself differently, to recognize that behind the pain there was a calling, to understand that the battlefield was your soul's initiation temple. You're not here to repeat patterns, you're here to transform them. The ego born in the storm. How we survive by becoming someone we're not. Have you ever asked yourself, who would I be if I'd never been hurt? If I never had to silence myself? If I never learned that being authentic was dangerous? Maybe deep down, you still miss someone, even if you're not sure who. A part of you that was buried long before you learned to talk about feelings. That part, pure, sensitive, intuitive, still exists. But it's been buried under layers, layers of masks, layers of adaptation, layers of survival. That's what we're talking about here. The ego as armor. Armor we created to weather a storm. But that now keeps us from feeling the wind on our face. The ego isn't the villain. It's the soldier we became to survive battles we never chose to fight. Jung didn't see the ego as an enemy, but as a necessary psychological function, a center of consciousness, a bridge between our inner world and the outer one. But the problem begins when the ego stops being a bridge and becomes a prison. If you were emotionally wounded in childhood, and most chosen ones were, your ego formed as a shield. It learned to protect itself with behaviors that secured love, acceptance, or at least the absence of punishment. The inner child learned that to survive, they had to be good, not cause trouble, not feel too much, not speak their mind. And so the self split in two. On one side, the true soul, on the other, the social persona. You know that persona. Maybe it's the super spiritual one who always stays calm, even when falling apart. Or the strong and independent one who never asks for help, because vulnerability felt dangerous. Or the helpful one, always there for others, but who forgot how to be there for themselves. These are ego roles, masks we wear to keep loving and being loved, even in hostile environments. But now, you don't need that anymore. You're not that child. You've walked far, faced the dark night of the soul, questioned yourself, deconstructed so much. And what hurts now isn't what they did to you. It's the distance between who you are and who you pretend to be. Now, let's touch a sensitive wound. Many spiritual seekers build a new ego, a spiritual ego. It's subtle, polished on the outside, but still a defense mechanism. It's when you believe you must always vibe high, that you can't feel anger, that you have to forgive everything, always smile, always understand others, even if it means betraying your own truth. That's not enlightenment, that's anesthesia in white robes. Carl Jung was clear, there's no real growth without integrating the shadow. Without facing what hurts, what challenges you, what embarrasses you. True spirituality isn't about being perfect, it's about being whole. How many times have you said yes when you wanted to scream no? How many times did you silence yourself so you wouldn't upset someone while it tore you apart inside? How many times did you smile with no strength left? These habits, repeated day after day, shape an ego that seems like you, but isn't. It's a reflection of fear. Fear of rejection, fear of abandonment, fear of not being loved for being real. The ego is a master at crafting narratives. It says, be like this and you'll be accepted. But it never tells you that the cost is losing touch with your soul. Neurologically, the ego grows stronger through habit. The brain, conditioned to emotional survival patterns, creates automatic responses. If you've spent your life shielding yourself from emotional pain, your nervous system has learned that pretending, pleasing, or hiding is safer than being exposed. That's why change is so hard. We're not just changing beliefs, we're reprogramming our body, mind, and soul. That's why spiritual awakening cuts deep. It demands that you die while alive, not physically, but psychologically. It's what mystics call the death of the ego, a process of unhooking from who you thought you were, so you can finally become who you've always been. You don't need to destroy the ego. You need to recognize it with love. The first step to dropping the armor is understanding it. Ask yourself, who did I have to become to be loved? What was I told I wasn't allowed to feel? What part of me did I hide just to belong? These questions are keys, not to attack the ego, but to integrate it, to turn the shield into a mirror, and realize that behind every programmed behavior, there was a silent cry for help. You survived. That's a miracle. Now, it's time to live. Maybe right now, you're thinking of the masks you still wear, the daily effort to maintain an image that exhausts you, the fatigue of pretending you're okay when you're not. Know this, there's no shame in that. There's courage. Courage to look within and say, I'm not this role. I want to find myself again. Comment below. I'm taking off my masks. Let's create a chain of souls who chose to shed the armor and be reborn. The ego was necessary. It protected you. It held you up when no one else could. But now, it needs to rest. The storm is over, and if you still feel like you're in the middle of it, Remember, it's not destroying you, it's revealing you. The inherited mask. Are you repeating your family's drama? Have you ever caught yourself saying something and then realized it was exactly what your parents would say? Have you found yourself in relationships that made you feel the same abandonment you felt as a child, or repeating patterns you once swore you'd never repeat? The truth is, hard as stone and liberating as light, we're trapped in stories we didn't write, inherited stories, invisible patterns. Masks that aren't ours, but we wear them as if they were. And here comes the question that can change everything. Are you living your life, or just acting out a drama that's been passed down for generations? Carl Jung was one of the first to say, "What isn't made conscious in one generation will be lived as fate by the next." He called it the family unconscious, a kind of collective psychic field where the pain, trauma, and secrets of a lineage are stored. Yes, beyond your personal unconscious, there's a transgenerational unconscious. And it's like a theater where roles are passed down silently from one actor to the next. You may be reliving the abandonment your mother felt from her father, or the emotional repression your grandfather carried but never expressed. You may be trying to save your mother through every romantic partner you attract, or living the scarcity your ancestors knew during wartime, even though you have plenty now. These aren't coincidences, they're echoes. In Jung's symbolic language, everything repressed becomes shadow, and everything left unhealed repeats itself. When a child is born into a family full of unprocessed pain, they absorb it. Like an emotional sponge, they soak in tension, anguish, and beliefs that were never even spoken out loud. And because the soul longs to belong to the clan, because exclusion means survival risk, it takes on the role that's missing in the system. Maybe you became the peacemaker, or the rebel, or the parentified child who cared for your parents, or the one who carried the emotional symptoms no one else wanted to feel. And that role shapes your whole life. Have you noticed how life seems to bring you the same people with different faces? You start a new relationship and feel the same abandonment. Try a new career and hit the same wall. Achieve something and soon sabotage yourself. These repeating patterns are clues from the unconscious. They're signs that you're living under inherited scripts, not your true will. Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." Here's the key insight. It's not fate, it's programming. Programming that can be rewritten. But first, you must look back with courage. Imagine a man who, as a child, watched his mother suffer in silence, diminished, unloved. He grows up and unconsciously attracts emotionally fragile, unbalanced women. He tries to save them, loves deeply, overgives, and ends up drained, empty. He's not loving in an adult way. He's trying to save his mother through every woman he meets. That's an archetypal pattern called the unconscious mother complex, a buried emotional script seeking repetition, hoping for redemption. But there is no healing in unconscious repetition. Healing begins only when you see. You can only transform what you can name. When you start mapping these patterns, emotional, behavioral, family, you start taking your power back. You stop being an unconscious actor and become the author of your own story. Start by asking yourself, what beliefs, fears, or phrases did I inherit from my family? In what area of my life do I keep repeating cycles that hurt? What pain am I trying to fix through my relationships? These questions aren't easy, but they are sacred. They're the beginning of the individuation process, the deep journey of becoming who you really are, free from emotional inheritances that don't belong to you. You may be sabotaging yourself out of unconscious loyalty to someone in your family. How so? Imagine in your family, no one succeeded, everyone struggled. So when you start to thrive, you feel guilty. You sabotage yourself, fail. Unconsciously, your soul says, I don't want to be different. I don't want to betray them. This type of loyalty is emotional, archetypal, and operates in the deepest layers of your being, but it can be healed with awareness, love, and an internal release of the old pact. You can honor your family without repeating their wounds. Grab a pen and paper, write, "I honor all that my ancestors have lived. I thank them for bringing me this far, but from this moment on, I choose to live my own story. I release the pain that is not mine, and I allow my soul to blossom, free, unbound by the past." Read it out loud. Cry if you need to. The soul understands the gesture. The unconscious responds to the symbol. You weren't born to carry the pain of the clan. You were born to heal and transcend. Maybe now you're remembering things you heard in childhood. You're just like your father. In our family, no one is lucky. Money isn't for people like us. Men don't cry. Be strong. You have to take care of me. These are contracts. And you can break them now. Comment below, "I'm breaking the cycle." Let's form a circle of awakened souls who've chosen liberation. The inherited mask is heavy, but you don't have to wear it anymore. You can look in the mirror of your soul and say, "This pain isn't mine. This story isn't mine. I am free to be who I am." The emptiness that follows us. Why nothing seems to fill it. Have you ever felt that even when everything is right, something still feels missing? Even with a good job, a family, stability, there's still a hole inside that seems to scream. Have you ever felt that temporary peace after an achievement, only to have that same emptiness creep back in days later, as if nothing had changed? That emptiness isn't depression. It's not ingratitude. It's the absence of the soul. It's the echo of the self, reminding you that you weren't born to follow a script. You were born to live a mission. We live in a society that tries to fill the void with consumption, distraction, and quick fixes. More likes, more shows, more courses, more partners, more food, more goals. But the more you chase, the more you feel far from something essential, that something has a name, connection to being. Carl Jung spoke of existential emptiness as the great disorientation of modernity. According to him, when we lose touch with the soul, with symbols, with mystery, life becomes flat, tasteless, meaningless. And then comes the crisis. Identity crisis, spiritual crisis, that feeling of being alive, but not really living. In the collective unconscious, there's a powerful archetype that embodies this emptiness: the orphan. The orphan isn't just the one who lost their physical parents. It's the one who lost their inner home. The one disconnected from their soul by trauma, repression, obligation. You can have a house, a family, friends, and still feel like an orphan. Because your essence was never embraced, because your pain was never validated, because your light was dimmed before it could shine. The orphan archetype lives on the margins of the heart. But when it awakens, it becomes the hero. Most of us spend our lives trying to fill from the outside what's missing on the inside. We want others to love us, to feel worthy. We want success to feel valuable. We want control to hide our fear. But none of that works. It's like trying to quench your thirst with salt water. The soul doesn't feed on achievements. It feeds on truth, presence, and meaning. While we search outside, the soul watches silently, waiting for us to come home. And here's what few dare to say: the emptiness is sacred. It's the space where the soul whispers, where the ego weakens, where illusions dissolve. Jung saw the void as an alchemical vessel, the place where the old self dies so the true self can be born. If you're feeling this emptiness, congratulations. It means your soul is waking up. It can no longer live half a life. It wants to be whole. It wants to be free. Have you noticed how the void follows a cycle? You feel bad, so you seek something to fill it. You buy, eat, work, chase someone. For a moment, it works. Then the void returns, stronger, deeper, That cycle repeats because you're not answering what the void is really asking. It doesn't want distraction. It wants listening. The soul wants to be seen, wants to be heard, wants to be expressed without fear, shame, or censorship. The void didn't begin in adulthood. It was born long ago, when you learned that feeling was wrong, that being spontaneous was dangerous, that showing pain was weakness. So you started shaping yourself, wearing masks, acting to please. And each time you said yes when you meant no, each time you silenced a cry, a rage, a desire, you dug that hole deeper into your chest. That hole is the gap between who you are and who you pretend to be. But there is hope, because when embraced, the void transforms. It stops being a hole and becomes a passage inward, a passage to the self, a passage to what Jung called the realization of wholeness. You don't need to run from the void anymore. You need to sit with it. Listen to it. Ask what it wants to reveal. You'll discover that what's missing was never other people's love. It was your own love for yourself. Maybe now you're remembering moments when everything looked fine, but you cried alone in the bathroom. Maybe you tried to explain it to someone and heard, "Why are you sad? Your life is great." And you stayed silent because no one understood. But I do. That emptiness isn't being dramatic. It's your soul crying out for air. Comment below, "I'm listening to my soul." Let's show the world we're no longer distracted. We're waking up. Tonight, before you sleep, sit in silence for 10 minutes. Breathe. Place your hand over your heart. Ask the void, "What do you want me to see? What am I ignoring in myself? What part of me is starving for me?" Write down the answers, even if they're vague, even if all that comes is tears. The void speaks. When heard with love, the emptiness is a calling to return to your soul, a calling to remember who you were before you had to be strong, a calling to live fully. You are not broken, you're being rebuilt with truth. Awakening begins in ruin, when pain becomes a portal. There are moments in life when everything falls apart. The ground disappears, certainties vanish, and the world you thought was yours collapses before your eyes. You lose your job, a relationship ends, an illness appears. Or one day, you just wake up and nothing makes sense anymore. This is rock bottom, the dark night of the soul, the ruin. But what if I told you that this ruin is the true beginning of your spiritual journey? Carl Jung wrote that the symbol of death in deep psychology is not an ending, it's transformation. It's the fall of the ego so that the self can be born. And that's why true awakening never begins in comfort. It starts with the fall, the breakdown, the silent scream of the soul that says, "I can't pretend it's all okay anymore." This symbolic death is part of every awakened being's path. It's when life forces us to stop, so we can finally hear what we've been ignoring. In mythology, the hero never begins his saga with a smile. He is pulled from his comfort zone, thrown into chaos, wounded, betrayed, stripped of everything that held him together. Why? Because only through pain does the ego dissolve. And only when the ego is silent can the soul speak. This collapse is an archetypal initiation rite. Ruin is the portal that separates the old from the new, the border between who you were and who you're about to become. Have you felt like you no longer recognize the person in the mirror? Like what once made sense now feels empty? Like the people around you can't see you anymore? These are signs of deconstruction. It's life saying, this version of you has expired. The ego resists. It wants to restore what's broken. It wants to go back. But the soul wants to be reborn. And to do that, everything that was illusion has to fall. In alchemy, which Jung used as a metaphor for psychic transformation, The first stage is called nigredo, or the blackening. It's total collapse, chaos, confusion, pain. But it's also the fertile ground where a new essence will be planted. Without ruin, there is no rebirth. Without the dark night, there is no dawn. Without emptiness, there's no space for truth to emerge. Are you in ruins? Then know this: the temple is about to be rebuilt. Most people see suffering as punishment, but for the awakened soul, suffering is a calling. It pulls us from the surface, forces us to stop running, confronts us with questions we've avoided for years. Who am I beyond the roles I play? What is true in me? What am I afraid to feel? Suffering tears us apart, but also reveals. And through that tear, a new consciousness begins to emerge. Maybe you expected awakening to be beautiful, light, mantras, peace, but real awakening isn't pretty. It's raw, it hurts, it demands, it disrupts everything, because it's stripping your life of what isn't truly yours. And for the ego, that's terrifying. But for the soul, it's liberation. Imagine a woman who was always the good daughter, married to please her family, chose a safe career, never said what she thought. One day, the marriage crumbles. She falls into crisis, quits her job, loses friends, and alone, crying on her bathroom floor, she has a realization: I've never lived my life. I've only played a role. That moment of ruin is the beginning of individuation, the process of becoming what your soul came here to be. Pain became a portal. Maybe you're in that place now. Maybe everything is falling apart. Maybe you're losing people, losing clarity, losing your sense of direction. Breathe. This isn't the end. It's the beginning. Comment below: my pain is awakening me. Let's show the world we're waking up, even if it means crying along the way. Today, write on a piece of paper: I let die what no longer represents me. I accept the fall as a portal. I am reborn in the truth of my soul. Burn that paper in a safe place. As the ashes rise, visualize your new self taking form. Not from fear, but from authenticity. Ruin hurts, but it's sacred. It's the ground where the new will be planted. It's an invitation to the truth you've always ignored. Don't resist, surrender. The fall is not the end, it's the beginning of your ascent. The shadow that haunts you is your teacher. How to integrate and set yourself free. There's a part of you that you hide, that you pretend you don't feel, that you repress every time you try to stay positive or keep the peace. That part is your shadow. Carl Jung said, "The shadow is everything that the person refuses to acknowledge about themselves, yet appears again and again in their projections onto others." In other words, everything you judge in others, everything that irritates, wounds, or triggers you deeply, is a reflection of something within yourself that you haven't healed. The shadow isn't evil. It's the exiled part, the wounded child, the silenced rage, the repressed sexuality, the denied power. The brilliance you learned to hide so you wouldn't make anyone uncomfortable. The shadow is the part that scares you, but also holds your greatest power. Have you ever had an extreme reaction to something small? Felt disproportionate anger, envy, or jealousy that made no sense? Those are moments when the shadow leaks out. It shows up in the subtext, in emotional outbursts, in automatic judgments. Why do we avoid looking at it? Because we were taught that anger is ugly, that envy is wrong, that desire is sinful, that being intense, emotional, unpredictable is dangerous. So we learned to shove all of that into a psychological basement and convinced ourselves we're only light. But the brighter the light you shine, the bigger the shadow behind you. How many times have you heard in spiritual spaces, always forgive, transmute your anger, vibrate love, don't judge? It sounds beautiful, but can also be deeply toxic if it's used to numb real emotions. Jung was one of the first to challenge spirituality that denies the shadow. He said, denying anger, fear, desire doesn't make us more spiritual, it makes us less authentic. True spirituality begins when you have the courage to look inside and say, yes, I'm all of this too. And still I choose to love myself. The shadow isn't just pain, it's raw life. It holds your repressed charisma, your silent sexuality, your stifled boldness, your domesticated leadership. It's everything you could have been if you weren't so afraid of not being loved. Integrating the shadow is reclaiming your inner territory. It's shifting from fragmentation to wholeness. To integrate doesn't mean to eliminate. It's not about fixing the problem. It's about welcoming, accepting, and dialoguing with the parts of yourself you once rejected. Here's a simple process to start shadow integration. Notice your emotional triggers. Whatever irritates or wounds you deeply points to a denied part of yourself. Write without a filter. Take a pen and paper and complete phrases like, I get irritated by people who, I never allow myself to. If no one would judge me, I would. Have a conversation with your shadow. Ask it, what are you trying to show me? Where did you come from? What pain are you holding for me? Embrace without guilt. Don't judge what comes up. Don't label it as wrong. Remember, everything inside you has a sacred reason to exist. A well-known therapist used to say she was Zen, peace and love, spiritually evolved. But she'd have outbursts of anger over the smallest things. She judged controlling people, avoided confrontation, and always said, I'm fine, even when she wasn't. Through shadow work, she discovered her anger came from childhood when her mother silenced her. She learned that to be loved, she had to be sweet. So she exiled her power, her voice, her legitimate anger. After integrating that part, everything changed. She started setting boundaries, saying no, speaking up without guilt, taking her power back. That's what shadow integration does. It brings home the parts of you that were exiled with love. Maybe now you're realizing how much you hide your own intensity, how much you adapt, quiet yourself, or emotionally shrink to seem like you're a good person. And maybe you're afraid to look inward and discover that you feel things you shouldn't feel. Breathe. That's normal, and that's sacred. Your shadow is the guardian of your inner temple. It's not here to destroy you. It's here to awaken you. Comment below, I'm integrating my shadow. Let's show the world that real spirituality includes truth. Take a mirror, look into your eyes for 2 minutes without looking away. Say, I see you. I see your pain. I see your strength. You're safe with me now. I won't abandon you anymore. This simple yet profound ritual is an act of reconnection with the parts of you that were left behind. Do it for 7 days. Watch what changes in you. Your shadow isn't your enemy. It's the most faithful teacher you'll ever have. It shows you every day where you're still wounded and where you still need to love yourself more. Integrating the shadow is the most powerful step in the spiritual journey. Because in that moment that you stop being half a person and become whole. Self-realization is the hero's return. Are you ready to be who you've always been? Every spiritual journey has a starting point, usually pain, but it also has a destination, the return to the inner home, not a physical home, but that state of being where you are at peace with your own truth. Carl Jung called this state individuation. It's when you are no longer a slave to your ego or to others' expectations. It's when your soul no longer screams because it's finally been heard. It's when you stop living to prove and start living to express. It's the hero's return, not as someone perfect, but as someone whole. The hero's journey, described by Joseph Campbell and studied by Jung, is a sacred cycle present in every culture and myth. The hero is called, they resist, they fall, they find mentors, symbols, and trials. They descend into the underworld of the soul, they face the shadow. They die to who they were, And finally they return, transformed, healed, with something to offer the world. If you've made it this far in this journey, it's because you're at that point. You're no longer the same. You've faced your ghosts, touched your pain, looked into your shadow, and now you're ready to be who you've always been. Jung said the final goal of the psyche isn't success or happiness or perfection. It's the encounter with the self. The self is the totality of the soul, the symbolic center that quietly guides you through life. It's that whisper that says, "This isn't you. You were born for more. Come home." The self calls you to be real, to live with purpose, to say yes to what expands you and no to what imprisons you. Being who you truly are takes courage, because living authentically can disappoint others. You'll lose people, you'll upset some, you'll be criticized, but you'll finally feel peace. The peace of not having to pretend anymore, of not wearing masks, of no longer carrying your family's pain, of not emotionally shrinking yourself to fit in. Are you ready for that peace? Ready to step into your purpose? The chosen ones didn't come here to follow rules. They came to break them, to heal lineages, to illuminate shadows, to remind humanity that soul exists, that mystery exists, that spirit exists. But to fulfill that mission, the chosen one must first choose themselves. They must stop playing the victim, take responsibility. Stop hiding behind trauma and say, "It's time. This is why I came." You won't hear trumpets, you won't see Hollywood-style miracles, but you will feel an internal coherence, an alignment between what you think, feel, and do. You'll notice that the right people start showing up. What's not real simply falls away. Time moves differently. Life begins to respond to you, because now you're in alignment with the flow of the self. And when you're in that flow, everything conspires for your growth. Here are 5 ways to live this self-realization daily. 1, be radically honest with yourself. Stop lying to yourself. Stop justifying old patterns. Face the truth. 2, say no to what shrinks you. Relationships, jobs, routines, if they don't help you grow, they're holding you back. 3, make room for the new. Don't stuff the emptiness with more distraction. Allow silence. 4, create rituals of presence. Meditate, journal. Walk in silence, breathe deeply. 5, express your soul. Through art, writing, speaking, dancing, anything that connects you to your essence is a form of prayer. You're not lost anymore. You're not fragmented anymore. You no longer need the world to validate you, because now you recognize yourself. This is true self-realization, to be who you are in a world that constantly tries to make you forget. Maybe right now you're feeling a silence inside, but it's a different kind of silence. Not the emptiness from before, it's the peace that comes when the soul is finally heard. Comment below, "I am who I've always been." And mark this moment as the rebirth of your true self. Stand before a mirror, look into your own eyes and say, "I recognize my journey, I honor my wounds, I embrace my shadow, I welcome my light, and from this day forward, I give myself permission to live my truth." Repeat it for 21 days. This is your commitment to your soul. You've come this far. You crossed the chaos, faced the ghosts, lit up the soul's darkest corners. You've been reborn. Now the final question isn't who am I? It's, am I ready to live it every single day? Because self-realization isn't a destination. It's a practice, a daily choice, a courage that's reborn with each sunrise. The world needs your truth, and your soul can finally breathe. The journey of the chosen never ends. It deepens. You made it this far. And if you did, it wasn't by chance. You've walked through the storm, looked pain in the eye, embraced your wounded child, made peace with your shadow, and started to remember who you've always been. Yes, you are one of the chosen, not because you're better, but because you're someone who dares to look, to feel, to awaken, while the world still sleeps. This journey doesn't end here. It only begins again from a deeper place, a place of awareness, of truth, of presence. You are the missing link your lineage has been waiting for. You are the turning point that opens the path to healing. You are the soul who came back to remind us all of who we are, and that requires more than beautiful words. It takes practice, commitment, courage, practical tips to live this transformation day by day. Soul journaling. Write freely every day. Let your soul guide your hand. Ask yourself, what did I feel today that I couldn't express? Rituals of reconnection. Create simple rituals. Light a candle. Breathe with awareness. Take a shower as if it were a rebirth. The sacred lives in the ordinary. Welcome your past with compassion. Revisit your story with new eyes. Everything that hurt also shaped you. Everything that broke also revealed you. Surround yourself with truth. Relationships can heal or wound. Choose to be with those who truly see you, those who lift you up, not drain you. Live in wholeness, not in halves. Stop pleasing just to survive. Life asks for authenticity, not approval. Final invitation to the audience. Now tell me, what part of this journey touched your soul the most? Share it below. Your story might be the mirror another soul needs to see. If this video helped you in any way, like it, share it, and subscribe. Help this message reach other chosen ones who haven't yet understood their pain. Together, we form a chain of healing, a silent army of awakened souls who are no longer afraid to feel, to face, to transform. You are not alone. And you never will be again until the next video with light, truth, and soul.